Hey, everybody, welcome to part 15 of the Bible study series. Today we are getting into chapter 19, and man, wow, this one right here, this is intense. This is going to get a little bit crazy, and everything we covered in the last video in chapter 18, it's setting this up, and we know that the Lord, came down. He appeared to Abraham with two of his angels, right? That he sent out towards Sodom and Gomorrah, because he said there, he said in verse 20 of chapter 18, he said, "I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so great, their wickedness is so flagrant." And he says, "I'm going down to see if their actions are as bad as I have heard. If not, I want to know." And remember that prayer, when Abraham approached the Lord and he gave that solemn prayer, and it was a prayer of concern and wanting to understand and get a sense of God's mercy and everything, and the Lord's mercy, and how all of that works, as far as, are you going to destroy the righteous along with the wicked? And we have an idea, because we know that one of Abraham's family members, Lot, is there in Sodom. So this was maybe one of those things where, that was kind of guiding that prayer. He wanted to make sure that Lot was going to be spared. And remember where we ended. He said, "If 10 are found, would you spare the whole city?" Okay, keep that in mind as we go through this. This is going to be really important, and just watch how all of this plays out. It is absolutely incredible. So here we go, guys. We are getting into chapter 19, and the title of the chapter here in the Bible is Sodom and Gomorrah Destroyed. Okay, so we already kind of have a foreshadowing of what's going to happen. We know that this city is going to be destroyed, but let's see what takes place, why it's going to be destroyed, and all the little details in between that make this chapter just something, a key piece. Okay, so as always, don't forget to pray before getting into this, and here we go. All right, so here we go. Remember, at the end of chapter 18, the two angels, they headed off, toward the city. And here we go. That evening, the two angels came to the entrance of the city of Sodom. And here we go. And Lot was sitting there, sitting at the entrance of the city. And when he saw them, he stood up to meet them. Now, I want to take a quick time out, and I want to point this out. Is notice that when they came to the entrance, that Lot was sitting there at the entrance of the city. Okay, and I didn't know this. I had to do research, reading through the study Bible, reading online at some of the commentary, and it was a thing of, of privilege, of authority, and, where business was conducted, where leaders met at the entrance of cities, at the gates of cities. These are where the more prominent people or leaders or people that were trying to, become a bigger part of the city, or in some important way, whatever it may be. This is where they met, at the entrance of the city. So I want you to keep that in mind, because this gives us a sense of Lot, the context of Lot, like where he is, in his mind and in his heart. That, man, it's like he's started to put down some roots. He's done some things. You know that he was a very wealthy man to begin with. So it seems like he's kind of maybe worked his way up the ladder. Okay, and this is why he was at the entrance of the city, right? And so keep that in mind as we read through this, that he has started to plant, put down his roots here, and become kind of one of those figures, in the city. And so he says, when he saw them, he says, "Hey, my lords," he said, "come to my home to wash your feet and be my guest for the night. You may then get up early in the morning and be on your way again." Now, doesn't that kind of ring some bells and sound very similar to the way Abraham greeted them as well, and invited them? Same sort of, vibe there. He says, "Come to my home to wash your feet and be my guest for the night." Okay, you may then get up early in the morning and be on your way again. So he's just seeing these two men coming through. He thinks that they're kind of just gonna pass through the city, that they're on their way somewhere. And he's thinking, hey, they'll get up and be on their way again. That they're just here for a short time, and boom, they're going on. But that's about to change. But listen to this. They say, "Oh no, we'll just spend the night out here in the open city square." But Lot insisted, and so at last they went home with him. And Lot prepared a feast for them, complete with bread that they ate and everything. Okay, so again, very similar to how Abraham greeted and treated them, how he was taking care of them. I think this is a part of that good nature that Lot has, that's in him. Okay, now I want you to understand this though, is that I've passed by this so many times when I read it. Is notice how when he first gives them the invitation, that they just say no, and they say, "We'll just spend the night out here in the open city square." And man, that says something. Lot doesn't quite get who they are right now, but we already know that the angels are going down here to do some reconnaissance, whatever you want to call it, to see if the city is so wicked. And look at when they decline his initial invitation, that they're like, "No, we're gonna sit right out here. We're gonna be right in the middle, out in the open of the city, to really get a sense of what's going on here." Right? I thought that was pretty cool and interesting thing that I just kind of sometimes skip over every time I read this. But Lot insisted, okay, as a host would do. He says, "Please," he says, "come." And so they end up going with him. Okay, but here's where things start to get a little out of hand, and we start to get a sense of why this judgment and why this destruction is going to take place. And it starts right here in verse 4. It says, "But before they retired for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house. They shouted to Lot, 'Where are the men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out to us so we can have sex with them.'" Wow. So Lot stepped outside to talk to them, shutting the door behind him. Okay, so real quick, notice how all the men of Sodom, it says young and old. There wasn't a certain, age group. The young and old, they came from all over the city, all the men of Sodom, and they surrounded the house. Okay, and these men were out to get these two visitors, these two strangers, out so that they could have sex with them. They could do such acts like that to them, such a perversion and things like that. Okay? And Lot, he goes out and he's like, "Hey, look, please, my brothers," he begged, "don't do such a wicked thing." Okay? Lot knows that this is evil, that this is sin. He says, "Don't do such a wicked thing. Look, this is where it gets crazy." He says, "Look, I have two virgin daughters. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you wish. But please leave these men alone, for they are my guests and under my protection." It's like, time out. Man, this is the part that I have a little bit of trouble with. I get it. I know what the study Bible kind of mentions here. We don't have a lot of information as to what this thought process was here. Okay, but it was custom that if you invite strangers underneath your roof, that they are under your responsibility. You're accountable to keep them safe and fed, and and all of that, just as Abraham was doing. So I understand that, but gosh, it's like he says, look, don't do this to these strangers, but I have two virgin daughters. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you wish. And again, you don't want to assume. We obviously know that the men of Sodom and Gomorrah, there was, a certain, obviously, a great depth of homosexuality there, where obviously they were demanding that these men come out so that they could have sex with them. So maybe he was just trying to throw them off. Maybe he knew that they wouldn't go for that, trying to buy time. I don't know, but it's just one of those weird things, but in the same token, he's trying to protect, the guests that are under his roof. Okay, maybe in not the way that most of us would, I get that. But that seems like what he was trying to do. Maybe buy some time to come up with another plan, and whatnot. So he says, please leave these men alone, for they are my guests and under my protection. The crowd of men, they're like, stand back. This fellow, he comes to town. They're talking about Lot. It's like, you come to town as an outsider, and now look, he's acting like our judge. We'll treat you far worse than those other men. Okay, what they were about to do, what they were planning to do with those men, that Lot welcomed into his home, they're like, we're gonna treat you even worse than they were gonna treat them, that they had planned. So there's a level of just gritty evil and wickedness that's going on inside of this city, inside of their hearts. Look what happens though. So Lot, he's starting to get overtaken, okay? And these two men, these two angels, as we know in verse 10, they come out, they reached out, and they pulled Lot into the house, and they bolted the door. And in verse 11, check this out. Then they blinded all the men, young and old, who were at the door of the house, so that they gave up trying to get inside. This is awesome because, one, I think now that Lot is going to realize, who they are, who these men are, and that these men that of the city are quickly finding out that they have knocked on the wrong door. They have tried to do a wicked thing to the wrong individuals here, to these angels. Okay, these angels, they step in and they start taking care of business. They're protecting Lot and his household and everything. And notice that they blinded all the men. Remember, young and old from all the city came, and they blinded every single one of them. No matter if they were young and didn't know, they were just going along with the flow. Okay, it didn't matter. Young and old, boom, you're going to be dealt with. Okay, so that they gave up trying to get inside. And meanwhile, the angels questioned Lot. They said, do you have any other relatives here in the city? He said, get them out of this place. Your sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone else. Here we go, verse 13. For we are about to destroy this city completely. The outcry against this place is so great, it has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it. Ooh, man, here we go. Coming out of chapter 18, it's starting to take shape. We're seeing what's about to happen. And it says the outcry, just as the Lord said back there in chapter 18, the outcry against this place is so great, it has reached the Lord. And remember, the Lord said, I want to find out. I came down to find out. And these angels are part of that. And they are finding out just how deep this sin goes and how deep it's rooted in this city. Okay? And so the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So check this out. Remember Lot's two virgin daughters. In verse 14, it says, so Lot rushed out to tell his daughter's fiancés. Okay, so they were virgin daughters, but they were engaged to be married. So he goes out and finds his daughter's fiancés and says, quick, get out of the city. The Lord is about to destroy it. Okay, so Lot, now he gets it. One, when these men, they blinded the men, young and old, right? And they couldn't get through the door or anything like that anymore. Oh, it's starting to click now with Lot and everything. Okay, and now they're telling him, you have to get out, get everyone. The Lord has sent us to destroy this place. It is clicking now, and he's like, oh my goodness, like this is legit. This is actually happening. Okay, and Lot, he rushes out, finds his sons-in-laws, or future sons-in-laws, and tells them, get out, the Lord is about to destroy this city. The next line right here, one, we talked about how in the very beginning, how it seems like Lot, sitting there at the entrance symbolized, gave us some insight that he was, rooted in this city. He was working his way up, that type of figure. And this next line right here gives us more insight as to how he has been over his household in terms of their relationship with the Lord, their fellowship and everything. Such a contrast from Abraham and his family, because when this happens right here and he's saying, quick, get out, the Lord is about to destroy this place. It says, but the young men thought he was only joking. And I love what the study Bible says here about this. Take note of this. This is crazy. It says, I'll just read it. It says, Lot had lived so long and was so contented among ungodly people that he was no longer a believable witness for God. Man. Okay. So again, he's coming to them. It's hit him like a ton of bricks. This is actually going to happen. But the way that he's lived his life and just soaked into this culture of sin and wickedness, although he knows, we already know, he says, don't do such a wicked thing. He knows that the city is wicked, but he's let it get to the point. He's lived his life in such a way that when it comes time for action and to do something that the Lord is saying to do, or that he's saying that the Lord is about to do, and people don't believe him, man, he had allowed his environment to shape him rather than he shaping his environment. Do those who know you see you as a witness for God, or are you just one of the crowd, blending in unnoticed? Man, such a little thing, right? I mean, you can read through this chapter and think that it's all just about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, which obviously primarily it is. But look at these little details in here that are so, I mean, they make this picture expand just more and more and more for our own lives. I mean, that last thing right there, I've been Lot. I have absolutely done this. Sometimes it happens daily where I find myself allowing my environment to shape me, or to control me, right? Rather than me being a part of shaping the environment around me. Think about that for yourself. Do those who know you see you as a witness for God, or are you just one of the crowd? Man, write that one down. I think that's definitely something to meditate and pray about as you're reading through this. Spend some time on it, because that's huge. That is huge. His own future family members did not even believe him because of how he's lived his life there, amongst the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. And it says Lot had compromised, so much to the point that he was almost useless to God. When he finally made a stand, nobody listened. Okay? It says, have you too become useless to God because you are too much like your environment? Man, to make a difference, you must first decide to be different in your faith and your conduct. Man, so all right, again, you're starting to see that contrast there between Abraham, okay, and Lot. And remember, we saw where back a few chapters ago when Abraham and Lot separated, that Lot he saw and he just desired out of his flesh instead of consulting with the Spirit as far as where the Lord was leading him. He just wanted what looked best, and you know this is where I want to be. And look at how it's shaped him, and whatnot. And man, it's crazy. Okay, so they didn't believe him, and at dawn the next morning, the angels became insistent, and they said, Lot, hurry, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, get out right now, or you will be swept away in the destruction of the city. Okay, so think about this. We coming out of chapter 18, we've had a sense that Lot has taken some wrong turns, some things, let his environment soak into who he is. He's planted his roots in just not the greatest place. And we heard that prayer of Abraham, and we had a sense that he was talking about Lot here, like, please, like, let this family, let my family be saved from this. Okay, we'll get more into that. It's going to become clear, much more clear in just a second. Because look at what the angels are doing. They're like, they're warning him, you have to get, here's what we're going to do. You have to get out right now, or you will be swept away in the destruction of the city. Okay, so we already know from the rest of the Bible that Lot was considered righteous. Hang on to that, because that might be a big question mark, considering where he's kind of ended up here in the midst of all this. But he was considered righteous, so we'll get to that in a second. And this one righteous man, okay, the angels, look at this grace and the mercy of the Lord, that they are warning him. They're telling him to get out. Okay, so he is not swept away with the destruction. So we want to talk about that prayer, concerning the Lord's grace and his mercy, what that was all about. The righteous and the wicked, will you sweep, the righteous away with the wicked? The answer is absolutely not. Okay, there's a difference, but check this out. You have to listen. You have to get out, or you will be swept away. In verse 16, though, it says, when Lot still hesitated, the angels seized his hand and the hands of his wife and two daughters and rushed them to safety outside the city. For the Lord was merciful. Okay, so right there, it says it. The Lord was merciful, even when Lot hesitated. And hang on to that. We'll get to that in just a second. But even when they're like, get out now. This is the second time we're telling you, that what's about to happen. Get out now, or you're going to be consumed in this destruction. And Lot, he still hesitated. And because the Lord was merciful, they literally dragged him. They took him and his family by the hand and led them out safely outside of the city. Think about that, guys. When we talk about what the Lord had, the mercy of the Lord, a lot of times we only see the destruction, and we're going to get into the fire and brimstone and all of that. But look at what the Lord will do for those that he considers righteous. Even righteous, we're seeing that, man, he was considered righteous, Lot, but gosh, he wasn't doing things the right way. And speaking of Lot's hesitation, the study Bible, it puts it so good. It says, Lot hesitated, so the angel seized his hand and rushed him to safety. And this tells us a little bit more about where he was in the context of, the city and everything, and in his heart and in his mind. Lot did not want to abandon the wealth, position, and comfort he enjoyed in Sodom. Okay? It says, it is easy to criticize Lot for being hypnotized by Sodom when the choice seems so clear to us when we're reading through this. Okay? But to be wiser than Lot, we must see that our hesitation to obey stems from the false attractions of our culture's pleasures. Man, so I love that. I made a note about this because we can read through this and be like, how could Lot get so, wrapped up in this, and men coming and trying to essentially rape, have sex with strangers and stuff like that, other men, and, how could he do this? And it's like, guys, we're in this every single day. Maybe not this way specifically, but we are in a culture that is swirling with wickedness and distractions. Okay, and yeah, my goodness, and the false attractions of our culture's pleasures. Man, that's a good one right there. I need to write that one down. I have it highlighted, but gosh, I love that. It's easy to criticize Lot for being hypnotized by Sodom when it seems so clear to us, but we have to see that we are in this position a lot of times right now in the world, right now in our environments. We must see that our hesitation to obey when the Lord is speaking to us and saying, get out, or to do something, or to stand, or whatever it may be, okay? Man, our hesitation, we we can't hesitate to obey, when we're so attached to those false attractions of the pleasures of our culture surrounding us. Man, that is that's awesome. That is deep right there. Okay? Hang on to that one. It says in 17, when they were safely out of the cities, one of the angels said, run for your lives. And this is key. And don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains or you will be swept away. Okay? Pay attention to the command here. Okay? The angels, they literally took them by the hands. They're saying, get out. And they're saying, don't look back or stop anywhere. And this is very, very key because of what's going to happen here near the end of this chapter. Okay? And even still, when they give specific instructions, escape to the mountains or you will be swept away, look what Lot does still. He says, oh no, my Lord, he begs. You've been so gracious to me. He says, I cannot go to the mountains because disaster would catch up to me there and I would soon die. So even after all this, after everything started to click and he knows what's about to happen and that the Lord is trying to get him away from danger, he's still not completely trusting. One, he's like, I would soon die. Disaster would catch up to me there. And he's being like picky. He's trying to control, what's going on. And it's like, man, Lot, what are you doing? Okay, but he says, there's a small village nearby. Please just let me go there. He's like, look how small it is. Then my life will be saved. So finally, they're just like, all right, I will grant your request. And it's like, okay, you're not completely obeying the command. I will grant your request. I will not destroy that little village, but hurry, escape to it, for I can do nothing until you arrive there. And this little place, okay, it was known as Zoar, which means little place. Okay, and Lot reached Zoar just as the sun was rising over the horizon. And then here we go in verse 24. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the sky on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them, along with the other cities and villages of the plain, wiping out all the people and every bit of vegetation. Okay, so we already know from back with our man Noah and the measures that God can take, the power, his perfect judgment that comes to absolutely wipe out and cleanse, you know, taking out all wickedness and sin. We know how much that bothers him, and there's no repentance as well. Okay, and his judgment. Oh my goodness! And look at how it's done. Rain down fire and burning sulfur, wiping out everything, all the people, and every bit of vegetation. Guys, in terms of how the Lord sees, the wicked, and what the judgment is for that, what the step, the consequence of that judgment, because he went down. We already know, the thought process here. The Lord was going to go down and see for sure, and for sure it was, as he had been hearing that outcry. And so the consequence of that good, right judgment was destruction, was getting rid of it. Okay? And man, keep that in mind. And but the one piece, okay, I'm going to skip real quick to verse 29. It says, "But God had listened to Abraham's request." Remember, that was so important. Hang on to that prayer in the last chapter. He had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain. So we know now that the Lord could see the true heart of Abraham there. What was that? The heart of his prayer. He was like, for my family's sake, oh, that's such a big thing. God listened to his request. He saw what was at the heart of that, and he kept Lot safe and removed him. When we talk about mercy, this is such an amazing thing. Okay, but going back real quick, everything was destroyed. But check this out in verse 26, because remember, the angel said, "Don't look back. Do not turn back. Not one time. Don't look back." But Lot's wife looked back as she was following behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Man. All right. So, timeout. She looks back. We know that the angel said don't, but she does. I want you to notice a few things here. Is that notice how she was following behind him? I think this goes. This is. I'm kind of, maybe I'm reaching here, but I would think in such a situation that you would want to, if I were Lot, that you would want to be behind everyone else to ensure that they are not looking back, turning back, or anything like that. I noticed that. I thought it was a little, threw up a red flag that she was following behind Lot. Okay, and when she turned and looked, she turned into a pillar of salt. And the study Bible says here, Lot's wife turned back to look at the smoldering city of Sodom, clinging to the past, and she was unwilling to completely turn away. Okay, so we know that they were rooted they had worked up to this position. Perhaps, Lot was at the gate of the city. This symbolized that he was a man of authority in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. So things on the outside, were good for them, in the terms of in the flow of the world and in the flow of things were good. Okay, but when the Lord steps in and says, "Man, no, this is not good," right? And says, "Get out of here, and you must not turn back to what was wicked." Why are you trying to hold on to this? Oh my gosh, she was clinging on to that, everything that they had built, all that position, the type, whatever it may have been, the wealth had just been destroyed, and she was clinging to it. It says, "Are you looking back longingly at sin while trying to move forward with God?" You can't make progress with God as long as you are holding on to pieces of your old life. Jesus said it this way in Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters." And I know that has a lot of different contexts, but here we can put it in the context of this situation right here, where she was wanting to serve that flesh, her heart desired what was there, what they were leaving behind, and what was getting destroyed. And so when she turned away from the safety and refuge that the Lord had commanded them to, it's done. She was consumed with it because her heart was still there. Man, I just put that in a way where it got to me. That's crazy. Okay. And here's the thing. When we talk about, there's a lot of, growing up, there were a lot of sermons, a lot of preachings, teachings about the fire and, brimstone and this judgment, and we've got to just have this fear, of this type of consequence and everything, almost trying to scare people into, loving, into a relationship with the Lord. And it's like, I hope that as you're reading this, it's not coming across that way, because it's not absolutely whatsoever, especially if you've been with us through this whole time throughout the Bible, that this is the last desire, the last, straw for the Lord, the last thing that he wants to do. But it's something that sin, it hurts him so bad, it separates us so much from the Lord. It has to be, destroyed. But look at the mercy there. Look at how those that he considers righteous, and we kind of know now that at the request of Abraham, that this was done. And we got to think that Lot was considered righteous because of Abraham and his plea to the Lord. We see that Lot was not doing things right whatsoever. He was even hesitating, at times, to obey the commands of the Lord and get out, to get to safety, away from the destruction and everything. And the Lord was merciful to him. He considered him righteous because of Abraham's sake and his plea for that. Okay? And so, guys, this is a huge chapter. This is something that it points to so many different things around the Lord that we should already know, and how he deals, judgment and the consequence of sin and wickedness, and how he goes about that. It's nothing to be played with. Okay, but we also see the other side of him literally taking his people by the hand, okay, to get out, to get away from this destruction. Okay, this is a big thing. So I want you to think about that as you read through this. I know this video is going on a little bit long, and I want you to keep reading through the rest of this chapter from verse 30 on, and notice how the situation with Lot and his daughters there now, because his wife is gone. Okay, so now it's just him and his two daughters, and we know that the daughters, their fiancés, they didn't leave. They didn't believe Lot, so they stayed behind. Boom, they're gone. So it's just Lot and his daughters, and what's going to take place. And they think that all hope is lost. They're trying to, keep their family line going. What's going to happen? Just it goes the wrong way. And we see the result. You say, well, what was the punishment of Lot in all of this? There had to be some consequence because he was just giving in to this whole environment. He wasn't, he was letting his environment shape him, as this said, and not being a part of shaping the environment. He knew what was wicked, but he wasn't doing anything about it, and he was staying there. Okay? And I think a part of his ultimate consequence is how the rest of this plays out for him, and how he gets duped into sin through the means of getting absolutely drunk, by his daughters, and what they do with having sex with him and becoming pregnant with child by him. Such a crazy thing, and it's all to preserve their family line, and in such the wrong way. It's crazy. And pay attention to the end there, that who these sons become. These are very, very key. We'll touch on that later on as we go, but it's the Moabites and the Ammonites that result from the birth of these two sons from Lot's daughters. Okay, it's absolutely crazy. So, wow, read through that. Know that this is not just about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. There are so many other little details that open up the picture about Lot, and also in our lives is what's going on with the environment around us, and what are we doing, allowing it to shape us, or are we doing something to shape it? It's a very, very big thing. Okay, so folks, we'll pick up again in chapter 20, finish reading through 19, and I'll pray over it, meditate over it, and I'll see you next time.